Hi everybody, this is Tagavaka here, and today I'm going to show you a studio breakdown of my track Sky, which is featured on the Explorations 18 EP. So the way I would work the track normally, or I would begin to create a track, is I'd always start with some chords on a beautiful piano. I like to use a plugin here called Keyscape, which is an absolutely amazing piano plugin by Spectrasonics, and it's a preset here called Dark Score. So the Dark Score tends to be very muddy, a lot of sort of mid and low end, but it sounds absolutely beautiful and quite haunting. So. So the key that I wanted to work in originally is C sharp major. It's sort of a favourite chord of mine, and so I just wanted to work the chords around that. So what I think I always want to do with these sort of chord changes is to move from a lot of the major to minor. So it would go from major to another major and to a minor. And then we repeat something similar for the second part of the phrase. So when we have that looped, it sounds really beautiful, and these things can just be a driving force under the track. And the one thing I really wanted to do with this song was have this feeling that there's two parts to this song. The first part being a call response, the first part being the call or the question, and that being quite emotional and fitting in with the chords of the piano. So the first top line that I'd written was this. Just a really simple one that sits slightly offbeat and from the piano chords, and when you put them together with the chords, it sounds really sort of have great movement to it, and it sounds really beautiful. So at this point, I want another. This is the response. I wanted another hook to come in. So the hook that I wanted to create was just something that would be completely different from the first one. So the one that came up was this. So something really quite quick in phrase. However, I really didn't want another piano response. I wanted it to be a little abrasive and completely different. So I actually used the synth for it. So when you hear the first part of this phrase and it goes to the response part of this phrase, they sort of really work as like a change in mood or a change in emotion. now that we've got the sort of core of the song, I wanted to add in some more some natural instruments like strings. So I added a top violin, and I added a cello, and I added a string ensemble. So I wrote these using a plugin on Contact, and this is basically just a beautiful sound that works really well over the piano and the certain synthesizers. So these have really beautiful movement in them, which gives it a lot of depth to the sound. And what I wanted to do was just have individual parts that sort of shown through, like a cello and violin. So with the string ensemble added on top of it, it really does sound like a beautifully natural song at this point, and I think in terms of sonically, it's nearly there. So the next thing I really wanted to work on was the drums, and I really wanted to write something in a breakbeat style because it's something I'm really enjoying at the moment from other artists and producers. So I worked from this breakbeat sample that I found. So it has a lot of low end in it, so it's just some simple EQing, and I took away some of the harsh mids here. And I found myself a nice punchy kick, and I followed the rhythm that comes naturally with the breakbeat. On top of that, just some straight hi-hats just to give it a nice straight rhythm, just so we can get more idea and a slightly touch more high end on it. I added these glitchy drums, which were some drum and bass samples that were setting at around 190 BPM, and I stretched these out just to give it a little bit more texture. And finally, on top of that, I added a shaker and some 909 rides just to give them more energy, just to give it a little bit more urgency in the song. And just to finalise the drums, I always put them into a drum bus. And on my drum bus I had a J37, which is a tape saturator. I had a little bit of saturation, and I use RVox on this, which is just really to control any little peaks that are coming out of the rhythms that I've added in. And obviously it's just a touch of EQ for any little sounds that I find. And these tend to give it, well, especially the tape saturator tends to glue the sounds a little bit together, and the saturator here, this tends to push a lot of the harmonics, especially in the kicks, and that's what makes what I find the drums sound really punchy and quite energetic. So underneath that, I really wanted to put a nice simple sub bass that was going to follow the chords of the piano. I had to bounce these one out because I wrote them on an old 32-bit plugin, which is Native Instruments Absinthe, but I don't use it anymore. But it is just a simple sub So you'll hear it now. What I did was just I took away a lot of the sub frequencies here. I sidechained it with the kicks, and I added again just some saturation just to bring out the low end harmonics with the bass. And so when you add the drums, the bass in with the pianos and the strings that I've added, we're getting pretty close to where I think the finished song should be. But at this point I really wanted just a little bit more depth and sort of a bit more of a dynamic range in terms of textures of sounds. So I added in some synthesizers. So this is the JX3P, which is just a little sort of bumbling synth that eventually the filter opens when I want to come towards the end of a section. Again, it's just driving the song, it's giving it a little bit more urgency. I added these beautiful bells that sit on the top of it, which give it, they're sort of grainy, they're sort of granular synth sound, which just set really nicely in the track and give it more texture. And I added a reverse pad synthesizer just to give a more transitional. That's also in key, that just makes it sound everything nice and gelled together. So when you add these in with everything, this is where I think the track sounds at this point nearly complete. So yeah, that's where I would be happy with, and the next thing I did after that was just to write myself some markers here just up the top, just about where I think things should come in, and I always generally will try and do a beats intro, a bass line in, and about a minute into the track was where I would probably do the first breakdown, and then from then on is when I would utilise having the call and response. Having a call and response in this track made it a little bit easier to arrange. So once this was fully arranged, just for a demo version on my master strip, I would add just a slight mastering compressor, so SSL compressor, just a little bit, just to keep everything quite tight. I wouldn't use it normally unless I was, for example, I wouldn't use it for a pre-master, but I would use it if I was making a demo version. So you can hear it in action here. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit of subtleness, just to keep everything in nice and tight in places. Then I also add a UAD Pultec EQ. Again, this is just it's worth the money, you know. Unfortunately, I can't afford a £20,000 real Pultec, so this is the next best thing, and I think it's really great to add to almost anything. I'm not sure how many people would add it to their master strip, but it's definitely worth doing. I think it has a beautiful warmth to it, and I also always give it a slight boost for anything above 8 kHz. So when you add this in, you'll hear the difference. Just a nice subtle brightness. I would normally use my outboard gear, which is an SSL Fusion, for the saturator, but just for the sake of this, I've just added in the soft tube saturator. But again, this is just to bring everything together, to add a touch more harmonics from the sounds, and should give it like a touch more energy and brightness. And finally, I would probably just add the Pro Q limiter, just a little bit of gain, and just to see how I'm getting on in terms of the volume, if I'm not smashing it too heavily. So yeah, there we have it. That's how I wrote Sky. This record's out on the Anjunadeep Explorations 18 EP. I really hope you guys like the song, and I really hope this studio session was informative and educational. And if you guys have any questions about anything to do with what I talked about today, please feel free to message me on Instagram. I'll always reply, and I'll always try to help. Have a good day, guys. Take it easy.